And I think that's the challenge she faces right
now. And down to the wire now, and many people who are within that undecided column, they don't know her. And as a result of that, they are kind of befuddled about, who do they vote for. They know Donald Trump, the person. They've seen what Donald Trump did as president. They have made their own mind up in terms of will they support him or not support him. But when it comes to the vice president of the United States, who is she? You know her better than most, Timothy. Who is Kamala Harris? And by the way, let's point out the fact that you've known her as being a Republican and now a man who's independently thinking. And of course, both of you have had your differences on political lines, Republican and Democrat. But who is she, the person, Kamala Harris?
Well, ironically, I've been in Vice President Harris's company for a number of years, probably going over 30 years, at different gatherings in San Francisco. Even though I was Republican, San Francisco is a Democratic town. So if you're not engaging with Democrats in San Francisco, you're not in the room where it happens. But ironically, the first time we actually had a one-on-one encounter, I was phone banking for her run for district attorney, and the phone banking was being hosted by a Republican. So she's had bipartisan engagement since really the inception of her career. Take it further, when I was appointment secretary to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, we worked directly with her in funding beds for re-entry, people that were coming out of incarceration and re-entering society. So she was forward thinking. And then even more so, my niece, Latifah Simon, who's running for Congress and was cited by CNN and others as one of the highlights of the Democratic National Convention, she worked for Kamala in developing a smart on crime strategy that went across the nation. She is driven, she is innovative, she is brilliant, despite President Trump's attacking of what he considers her IQ. And, let us not forget, she has been a district attorney, an attorney general, a United States senator out of the fourth largest economy in the world. What does that mean? That Gavin Newsom attends the G7. He's just not a G7 participant. That's how large California is. And I often have to say to my dear Republican brothers and sisters across the country, don't play California cheap. As Governor Schwarzenegger said, we are the nation state. Our size is larger than most nations in the country. So when you come out of California and all of the positions that she has won handedly, then you are very seasoned and very experienced. And that's what we're seeing in Kamala Harris. And then you add going on 4 years as vice president, and she is probably, not me, but political historians have said that she's probably the most qualified candidate for president in our nation's history.
But that messaging, as you know, has been problematic, and in many ways it's been murky and muddied by her opponent, who is very, very. Look, you got to give it to him. The Donald, or the former president, knows how to campaign and knows how to appeal to his base, and he's even crossed over into some of the places where Kamala Harris would have expected some support. I'm speaking notably about black men. Talk to me about that, because you've seen this this new dynamic that's been taking place.
Well, in every cloud there's a silver lining, and what I'll give former President Trump credit is that him specifically targeting black men and soliciting their vote is unprecedented. The Democratic Party has always taken the view that black women voted various candidates, whether it was Doug Jones in Alabama or Senator Warnock in Georgia, and even Joe Biden, even though it was James Clyburn who gave the endorsement of Joe Biden, which is probably the most impactful endorsement in American history. I think the Democrats and Vice President Harris are also paying the price for their nomenclature. Their words matter. When you start saying that someone that is illegal is not illegal when they're undocumented, I don't think they realize how offensive that was to those who have been wrapped up in the criminal justice system. Add President Trump's felonies. People criticized him when he said, my mugshot has made me relevant to black folks. Well, you know, I listened to Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud station on Sirius XM, and there was a roundtable discussion, and someone said to a Trump supporter, so you're going to vote for a convicted felon? And he said, most of my friends and family are convicted felons. So I think Democrats did not realize and that their wording on the issue of immigration was actually going to backfire against them, because they created the belief that someone who unfortunately had to live in the shadows was some kind of sacred cow amongst us. I think the intentions were honorable, but the road to hell are paved with bad intentions. Also, black men, Latinos, other affinity groups, we are not monolithic. You have to meet us where we are if you want our vote and understand our pain and even our hopes and desires. I think adding insult to injury, a man that I admire, by the way, but former President Barack Obama, speaking to black men, and in some is characterized shaming or lecturing them about being willing to vote for women. Black men have been dealing with our mothers, our sisters, our wives, all of our lives. And it is clear that we are a community that creates some of the most dynamic women leaders that have been supported by black men, whether it's Shirley Chisholm or Maxine Waters, or I can go on and on and on, Kamala Harris. So I think that Democrats, those chickens finally came home to roost. And President Trump, former President Trump, is the most entertaining candidate in American history. His ability to capture the imagination, and unfortunately the grievance imagination of the American public, is a weapon that is working for him. And Democrats have to come to grips with thinking more about the people that they're offending. They're quick to say who President Trump has offended, and his vitriol is by far toxic. But they fail to accept the fact that their actions also had a bullying or negative impact on certain communities.
I'm talking to Timothy Allen Simon. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we'll talk to him more. A wonderful conversation about what's happening on the campaign trail with someone who has known the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, for more than 30 years. He is Timothy Allen Simon, a former California Public Utilities Commissioner and Appointments Secretary for Arnold Schwarzenegger when he served as governor of the great state of California. You've also known Kamala Harris for more than 30 years before she even became known statewide and, of course, nationally, and now, of course, internationally. You've assessed her campaign. You've talked about how difficult the task has been in getting her to be front and center with the American people, to get them to know her. If she's missed the mark on that, and certainly she is extremely qualified, particularly based on how you've identified her credentials and all that she's done, and she's been very forthright about that. Why do you think she has not been able to gain more support this deep into the election and this close to the election?
Well, first off, you have the issue of partisanship in our country. We are probably more divided on a partisan basis than we've ever been historically. And you have certain voters that are going to go with the party line regardless. And that's just how they were raised, and they're not moving out of that. Her challenge has been the swing voters, particularly in the battleground states that will decide the president because of our electoral college. She is having to work against the economic track record of the Biden administration, whereby the achievements of the administration are unprecedented, but inflation has eroded the net positive impact on working families. Getting back to words matter, Democrats are telling people that you're not feeling what you're saying you're feeling because the latest jobs report or the latest interest rate drop and all of these things. I think the messaging should have been, hold on, I'm coming, hold on, good times are on their way. And so you had an immediate distrust amongst communities because you're telling me I'm not feeling what I'm feeling. So she has difficulty distinguishing herself from Joe Biden. You also have to take into account that Joe Biden has very high popularity amongst the African American community. Not only in his selection of Kamala Harris as his running mate, but the appointment of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. And I can go on and on and on. The forgiveness, his efforts, even though reversed by the courts. And once again, he's at it to try to forgive student loan debt, which really impacts all people of all colors that are being burdened economically. So you're trying to make a distinction against a man in an administration that you were part of that had significant achievements, but you have to make those distinctions to capture that swing vote. And that is threading a needle that is not easy. But I believe if anyone can do it, it's Kamala, or the vice president, but she has to basically abandon the loyalty and understand that as Oakland Raider owner, former owner, now deceased Al Davis would say, just win, baby, just win.
What are your concerns about America reacting and responding to who will be the next president of the United States, whether it's Vice President Kamala Harris or the former President Donald Trump?
My primary concern is political violence that will result in the aftermath of this election. And we have to remind ourselves our country has a history of political violence from our revolution on to our expansion westward. There are many elements where we as a nation use violence as a means to increase power and what some would call hegemony over certain communities. But there are militia groups that support former President Trump that will probably take action to try to subvert the election results. You also have the political framework in that elections are run by states. And some states are already or have already adopted policies to obstruct the election results, along with the Supreme Court that has demonstrated a majority affinity towards President Trump and his pursuit of executive power beyond probably any president in American history. Hence, he has created a culture or a belief through misinformation that if I lose, it's only because the election was rigged. And to this date, he does not acknowledge the fact that he lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden. So we already have the ingredients in place for unrest. I think we are already ideologically in a civil war. I just hope and pray that it doesn't move into the violent confrontational space. But in my view, I think it is almost inevitable.
Having said that, there are some outside forces like Russia and China. It's been reported how they have been trying to maneuver, and I should include Iran as well. They've been trying to maneuver and manipulate some of the American people to respond with some sort of political intrigue and violence in the wake of the election, regardless of who wins. You've expressed your concerns. What happens if President Trump goes on to win? How will the left respond?
I don't see the threat of political violence from the left, but I do think there will be demonstrations, legal efforts to challenge the results. I think both sides are, have in place a defeat game plan. But I think the potential for violence from all indications seems to be coming from the far right or the MAGA movement. But at the end of the day, I believe that if Vice President Harris loses the election, she'll lose with dignity, she'll lose with respect, and will lose with a reverence towards the United States Constitution.
What is your hope for America?
My hope for America is that we can come together as a nation and begin to attack the tough issues that we have as a nation And that includes putting our resources into communities that have been resource deserts to some degree. You look at the amount of money that is going to the Ukraine war, to the Israeli or the Israel's expansion into the Gaza and Lebanon. You look at the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that we can allocate on a moment's notice. And by the way, I've not seen a vote of a War Powers Act. We have secret wars going on throughout, and particularly in the global South and Africa. I think I'm looking for a country that's saying we have to take care of our interest at home before we can fund interests abroad. Now, we as African Americans have personal experience here. When my father fought in World War II, when he came back home, he could not vote, or he did not have the legal protection of voting. And if he wore his naval uniform in Lake Charles, Louisiana, he could be at risk of being lynched. So we know how the conspiracy theories, white supremacy, as well as a nation's belief that we have to police the world, has had an impact on us. It was referred to as guns and butter. Guns and butter. You can't do both. So it's my hopes that whoever wins this election, they begin to address housing, healthcare, mental health care, and other things that are so important to have a healthy, prosperous society.
Timothy Allen Simon, thank you. Those are issues that we have not heard enough about along the campaign trail. We've heard a lot of demonizing of each other and each party, but we need to get back to the issues. I appreciate you being on the program as always. Thank you, my friend. We're coming back with more in just a moment. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'd like to thank our guests who appeared on the program, Timothy Allen Simon and F.H. Buckley. Certainly both men have worked with leaders in this nation, and they both have a concern about the future and hope of America. And of course, they agree to disagree on who the better choice will be on Election Day and moving this country forward. Well, they resonate what many Americans are feeling right now. But again, as we stated at the top of this program, it's important for each and every one of us to pray, to vote, and to stand for America. And how you do that is between you and your faith in God and the candidate of your choice. The bottom line, though, is that we must determine in order to become a more perfect union, that we learn to spread love, freedom, and peace, and let hope prevail, regardless of who is leading this nation, because we, the people, must understand it's a government by the people, for the people, and of the people. So do your part, America. Pray, vote, stand, and keep hope alive. Until next time, God bless.